11,500 years ago, long before the pyramids, before any known civilization, someone built something impossible. Massive stone pillars, intricate carvings, precise alignments to the stars.
Göbekli Tepe is a bit more nuanced.
Göbekli Tepe turned out to be what you think it might have been.
We have stone circles, we have some interesting astronomical alignments, the world's first perfectly north-south aligned building.
And then, 3,000 years later, they buried it. Deliberately, carefully, like they were hiding a secret. In 1994, we finally dug it up, and what we found changes everything we thought we knew about human history. This is Göbekli Tepe, the temple that shouldn't exist.
So far, they have not yet found any human remains at the site.
You know what we've all been taught, right? The story goes like this. Ancient humans were simple hunter-gatherers. They wandered in small groups, hunting animals, gathering plants, just trying to survive. Eventually, around 10,000 BC, someone figured out farming. People settled down, villages formed, society got complex, and only then, after all of that, did they start building monuments. That's the timeline. That's what's in every textbook. There's just one problem. It's wrong. In southeastern Turkey, on a dusty hilltop, sits a temple complex that completely destroys this neat little story. It's called Göbekli Tepe, and it was built 11,500 years ago. Let me put that in perspective for you. The Great Pyramid of Giza, 4,500 years old. Stonehenge, 5,000 years old. Göbekli Tepe was already ancient when these were built. We're talking about a structure that's 7,000 years older than the pyramids. And here's the part that should make every historian uncomfortable. It was built by people who supposedly had no agriculture, no metal tools, no permanent cities, and no complex society. Yet somehow they moved 20-ton stones. Somehow they carved intricate designs. Somehow they organized massive construction projects that lasted for centuries. If you watched my video on the pyramids, you know we talked about evidence suggesting those monuments might be older than the official story claims. We discussed the possibility of lost knowledge, of advanced civilizations that history forgot. Göbekli Tepe isn't a theory. Proof that we've been wrong about when civilization actually started. Proof that our ancestors were capable of far more than we give them credit for. So let's dig into this, because once you see the evidence, you can't unsee it. The year is 1994. German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt is surveying sites in southern Turkey when local shepherds tell him about some strange stones on a nearby hill.
So it's an unbelievable good preservation of this enclosure, which had been erected by Stone Age people so long ago.
The area is called Göbekli Tepe, which translates to Potbelly Hill. Not exactly inspiring. Schmidt decides to take a look anyway. He brushes away some dirt. What he sees stops him cold. Massive limestone pillars arranged in circles, T-shaped, some of them 3 times the height of a person, covered in carvings of animals, foxes, lions, bulls, scorpions, snakes, vultures, all carved with incredible detail and skill. Schmidt knows immediately this is something extraordinary, but he has no idea just how extraordinary until the carbon dating results come back. 11,500 years old. Think about what that means. When these stones were carved, the last ice age had barely ended. Mammoths were still walking the earth. The Sahara Desert was green and wet. There were no cities anywhere on the planet. Writing wouldn't be invented for another 6,000 years. The people who built this were supposed to be living in small nomadic bands, focused entirely on finding their next meal. Yet here's a monument that required planning, organization, specialized skills, and massive amounts of coordinated labor. Schmidt spent the rest of his life excavating the site. He died in 2014, but his work revealed at least 20 circular structures, each one a ring of massive pillars. And here's the thing, they've only excavated about 5% of the site. Ground-penetrating radar shows there's much more still buried underground. We've barely scratched the surface, and what we've found already rewrites history. So who built this? And more importantly, how? Let's talk about what life was supposedly like 11,500 years ago. According to mainstream archaeology, humans at this time were hunter-gatherers. They moved with the seasons, following animal herds and plant growth. Their groups were small, maybe 20 to 50 people. They had no permanent homes, no agriculture. Their tools were made of stone, bone, and wood. No metal whatsoever. Their entire existence revolved around one thing: survival. Now look at what we're seeing at Göbekli Tepe. The largest pillars weigh up to 20 tons. That's 40,000 pounds. These weren't just lying around on the surface. They were quarried from limestone bedrock, shaped into precise T-forms, transported to the hilltop, and erected in perfect circles. Try to picture the logistics. You need hundreds of people. You need ropes, wooden sledges, probably some kind of lever system. You need someone directing the work, telling people where to dig, how to cut, when to pull. You need people feeding all these workers. You need planning that spans not days or weeks, but years, decades, maybe centuries. This isn't something a small band of nomadic hunter-gatherers does in their spare time. And it's not just one circle of stones. There are at least 20 of these structures, each with its own unique design and carvings. Some of the pillars stand over 16 feet tall. The precision with which they're shaped and placed suggests people who knew exactly what they were doing. Then there are the carvings themselves. Every pillar is covered in detailed reliefs of animals, not crude stick figures. We're talking about three-dimensional carvings that show muscle definition, feathers, scales. The artists knew these animals intimately. They understood anatomy. They had skill that takes years to develop. Some pillars show human arms on the sides, as if the T-shape represents a stylized human figure. There are mysterious symbols that might be early writing or astronomical markers. We honestly don't know. What we do know is this: the people who created Göbekli Tepe had knowledge, skills, and organizational capacity that shouldn't exist for thousands more years. So where did they get it? Nobody has a good answer. And that's exactly what makes this so fascinating. Let me tell you about some of the carvings, because they raise even more questions. One pillar shows a scorpion. Not just any scorpion, but one that's clearly based on careful observation. Every detail is there: the segmented tail, the claws, the body proportions. Another shows a fox, captured mid-movement, so lifelike you can almost see it breathing. There are repeated symbols that appear on multiple pillars, a strange H shape, circular symbols, abstract designs that might represent constellations or religious concepts. And then there's Pillar 43, which has become famous among researchers. It shows a vulture, a scorpion, and what looks like a headless human figure. Some researchers think this might be depicting a comet impact or astronomical event. Others think it's purely symbolic. The truth is, we're still trying to decode what these images mean. But here's what gets me. These aren't random doodles. There's intention behind every carving. These symbols meant something specific to the people who made them. They were trying to communicate something important enough to literally carve in stone. What was so crucial that it needed to be preserved this way? The more you look at the details, the more sophisticated it becomes. Some carvings show animals that weren't even native to the area. How did the artists know what they looked like? Were they traveling hundreds of miles, trading with distant groups? Or does this suggest something we haven't considered? And remember, these carvings were made with stone tools. No metal chisels, no modern equipment, just patience, skill, and thousands of hours of work. The level of artistry rivals anything you'd find in medieval cathedrals. Yet this predates those by over 10,000 years. We're looking at art from a time when humans supposedly couldn't do this, but there it is, undeniable, beautiful, and completely unexplained by our current understanding of history. Now let's talk about something that connects directly back to what we discussed in the pyramid video: astronomical alignments. Research into Göbekli Tepe has revealed something fascinating. The structures aren't randomly oriented. They align with specific points on the horizon where stars would have risen or set 11,500 years ago. One researcher, Martin Sweatman, analyzed the symbols on Pillar 43 and concluded they might represent constellations. Specifically, he thinks the vulture represents Cygnus, the swan. The scorpion might be Scorpius. If he's right, these carvings could be a star map, frozen in time. Why would ancient hunter-gatherers care about the stars this much? Here's what we know. Humans have been watching the night sky for as long as we've been human. The stars don't just tell you when seasons change. They're navigation tools, calendars, storybooks. In a world without artificial light, the night sky dominated half of human experience. But Göbekli Tepe suggests something more. It suggests these people didn't just watch the stars casually. They studied them, they tracked them, they encoded astronomical knowledge into permanent stone monuments. This mirrors exactly what we see at Giza, with the pyramids aligning to Orion's belt. It shows up at Stonehenge, aligned to solstice sunrises. It's at Angkor Wat, laid out to match the constellation Draco. There's a pattern here. Ancient peoples across the world were obsessed with preserving astronomical knowledge in their most important buildings. Why? Some researchers think it's religious. The sky was home to the gods, so aligning temples to the stars made sense. Others think it's practical. Agricultural calendars based on star positions, timekeeping. But there's another possibility that's harder to dismiss. What if they were trying to preserve knowledge? What if they knew something we've forgotten? What if these monuments are messages encoded in stone and stars meant to survive for thousands of years? I'm not saying I know the answer. I'm saying the question deserves to be asked. Because when you look at sites like Göbekli Tepe, the pyramids, Stonehenge, you see a level of astronomical sophistication that doesn't fit the primitive people just worshipping the sky narrative. There's something deeper here, something we're missing. Now we come to the strangest part of the whole story. And trust me, this is where it gets really weird. Around 8000 BC, after Göbekli Tepe had been standing for roughly 3000 years, someone made a decision. They buried it, not partially, not accidentally, deliberately and carefully. They filled in the entire complex with thousands of tons of dirt and rubble. Picture the effort this took. You'd need to haul in dirt from somewhere. You'd need hundreds of people moving it, packing it in, covering every structure completely. This wasn't abandonment. This was intentional preservation. But why? If this was their most important religious site, their gathering place, why bury it? What happened that made hiding it seem necessary? Some researchers think it was religious. Maybe their beliefs changed and the old temple needed to be sealed away. Maybe it was seen as sacred ground that shouldn't be disturbed. Others think something catastrophic happened. There's evidence of a major climate shift around this time. The Younger Dryas period was ending, temperatures were rising, environments were changing. Maybe the burial was a response to disaster, or maybe, and this is the theory that keeps me up at night, they were protecting it, sealing it away so it would survive whatever was coming. They didn't destroy the carvings. They didn't tear down the pillars. They carefully buried everything, preserving it perfectly for someone in the future to find. That's exactly what happened. 11,000 years later, we dug it up and everything was intact. Were they trying to send a message across time? Here's another strange thing. After Göbekli Tepe was buried, the architectural sophistication we see there seems to vanish from the archaeological record. Later, structures in the region are much simpler. The carving techniques disappear. The organizational capacity to build something this massive fades away. It's like humanity took a massive step backward. Where did the knowledge go? Did it die with the people who buried the site? Was there some kind of collapse that wiped out the skills and information needed to build monuments like this? We don't know, but the pattern is clear. Göbekli Tepe represents a peak of knowledge that came earlier than it should have, then disappeared for thousands of years. So let's step back and look at the big picture. We have a site that's 11,500 years old, built by people who supposedly couldn't build it, covered in sophisticated carvings and astronomical alignments, then deliberately buried for reasons we can only guess at. And remember, we've only excavated 5% of it. 95% remains underground. Who knows what else is down there? This isn't speculation. This isn't a fringe theory. Göbekli Tepe is accepted by mainstream archaeology. Klaus Schmidt's work was peer-reviewed and published. The dating is solid. The evidence is undeniable. What it proves is this: the timeline we've been taught is wrong. Civilization didn't start with agriculture, leading to settlements, leading to monuments. At Göbekli Tepe, the monuments came first. Religion and gathering came first. Agriculture developed in this region after the temple was already built, possibly as a way to support the people gathering there. The whole sequence is backward, and if we're wrong about that, what else are we wrong about? In my pyramid video, we talked about evidence suggesting those monuments might encode knowledge from an earlier, more advanced time. We discussed geological evidence that the Sphinx might be thousands of years older than claimed. We asked, whether there could have been civilizations we've lost all record of. Göbekli Tepe doesn't answer all those questions, but it validates them. It proves that humans were capable of sophisticated construction, complex organization, and deep astronomical knowledge thousands of years before we thought possible. If they could do this 11,500 years ago, what else could they do? What other sites are still buried, waiting to be found? The more we dig, the older everything gets. The more we study, the more sophisticated ancient peoples appear. Every major discovery pushes the boundaries of what we thought was possible. Göbekli Tepe is just one site, one complex, in one region. How many more are out there, still covered by sand and dirt and time? Here's what keeps me fascinated by all of this. Göbekli Tepe stood for 3,000 years. That's longer than the pyramids have been standing, longer than Christianity has existed, longer than most empires in human history. For 3,000 years, people came to this hilltop. They carved new pillars. They performed ceremonies we can only imagine. They watched the stars from the center of those stone circles. Then they buried it all, and for 11,000 years, it waited in the darkness. Until 1994, when Klaus Schmidt brushed away the dirt and brought it back into the light. What we're seeing is proof that human history is older, stranger, and more complex than the official story admits. We're looking at evidence that our ancestors possessed knowledge and capabilities that don't fit the narrative we've been taught. And this is just the beginning. There are other sites out there, other mysteries, other pieces of the puzzle waiting to be discovered. In future videos, we're going to explore them. Places like Baalbek with its impossible megalithic stones. The underground city of Derinkuyu, carved 11 stories deep into solid rock. Pumapunku with its precision-cut blocks that challenge modern engineering. Each one raises the same question: what aren't we being told about our own past? If this video made you think, if it challenged what you thought you knew, hit that subscribe button, because we're going deep into these mysteries. We're looking at the evidence, and we're asking the questions that need to be asked. What do you think about Göbekli Tepe? Does this change your perspective on ancient history? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The more you learn, the clearer the pattern becomes. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, question everything, because the truth about our past, it's still being written.